Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Partners in Crime Speed Mooting Podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Hayley.
On today's episode, we discussed a poll that we shared recently on our social media channels. The poll asked barristers why they went to the bar rather than became solicitors. And as part of that, we discussed some of the key differences in the roles of barristers and solicitors.
And closely related to that, we discussed how barristers might naturally have a love of public speaking, but not always. And John gave some really helpful tips and advice on how you can improve your nerves and your techniques when it comes to public speaking.
We answered a number of questions that we've received from our listeners, and then finally we discussed the latest from Speed Mooting and some of our upcoming events. So we enjoyed recording the podcast. We hope you enjoy listening to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the next episode of Partners in Crime, the Speed Mooting Podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Hayley.
And welcome to another episode.
Episode 8.
Episode 8. We are flying with these things, aren't we, Hayley?
We've been doing this for 2 months.
2 months.
How quickly has that gone?
Yeah, flown by.
Insane.
Absolutely flown by.
So first things first, big question.
Yes.
Everyone's going to want to know.
Of course.
Which Formula 1 star is this episode being named after?
Well, quite a special one today. They've all been special, but this is our first non-German episode.
Okay.
Yeah. Any idea who it might be, Hayley?
Give me some clues.
Okay. He's from France.
Okay.
He
France.
I'll grab the nettle. He was involved in probably the biggest crash I've ever seen.
Oh, I do know. Oh, he burnt his hands.
He certainly did.
What's his name?
Roman Grosjean.
Oh, of course, Roman Grosjean.
Episode 8, the Roman Grosjean special. I mean, I remember seeing that live. Wow. To put this in context, members of the Speed Mooting community, we need a name for our
I really thought you were going to say members of the jury.
Well, I nearly did. I've been saying it so often recently, but we need a name for our listeners at some point. So sorry to sidetrack, but we need a name for our listeners. Members of the Speed Mooting universe. If you can think of a name for us, let us know.
Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, that one, does it?
No, but yeah, Roman Grosjean. It was it must have been the Bahrain Grand Prix from 2020, and the opening lap of the race, he had a spin and ended up going through the Armco barrier. And you could see how we were discussing this the other day. You know, you've got your wide angle shot because it's the opening lap of the race, and they want to try and catch everyone on lap 1 because that's where you see the most action. And at the corner of the screen, you'll see this bang, huge explosion. And
how he survived,
because his car effectively went through the Armco barrier, had this explosion, and somehow he managed to undo his seatbelt. And bear in mind, for those of you that don't watch Formula 1, it's not a seatbelt like in a car. This is a 5-point harness. Pulled himself out and got out the car.
Jumped through the flames.
Incredible. I mean,
if you've got a strong stomach, you can probably watch it on YouTube.
It must be there.
Because I remember afterwards, when they knew he was okay, they showed the footage in like slow motion of him jumping out the car.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking about, I want to say they're called the stewards, but I don't know. But you know, the people along the side, and they're there, and they were like in the flames, like pulling him out as well. And I was just like, it was insane to watch.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Thoroughly deserved episode title today.
Yeah, thoroughly deserved. And I think just sticking with Roman Grosjean just for a second, and we'll bring it back onto law now. I think he's a good inspiration for law students as well, actually, because we were talking last week about pupillage offers and people who may not have got the pupillage offers, and that feeling that you may want to give up. I think he's a good example of not giving up, because when his Formula 1 career first started, he was thrust in mid-season, very young, teammates with a prime Fernando Alonso. You're talking Alonso was probably like 29 at the time. Not the person you want to be teaming up with, so very difficult circumstances. And as you can imagine, things didn't go quite well. He left Formula 1. What did he do? He went back down, went to GP2, became the champion, and then worked his way back up. So that's a good example of, do you know what? Sometimes in life, you might just need to take a step backwards, build up your skills, build up your experience, and then move on. And he had a very successful career in Formula 1 from there, scored lots of podiums, fantastic season in sort of 2012, 2013 when he was with Lotus. So yeah, he's a good example, good inspiration for law students out there. If you don't get those training contracts, don't get those pupilages right away, take a step back, build up your skills, build up your experience, and then have another crack at it. And
think, what would Roman Grosjean do?
What would Roman Grosjean do? Exactly.
That could be one of our slogans.
That could be one of our slogans. So anyway, let's leave the Formula 1 and let's get on to the business of law.
Let's do it. Yep.
So you ran an interesting poll on our social media channels last week, didn't you, Hayley?
Yes, I did. So it was, I've got it in front of me actually. So it was aspiring and practicing barristers. We want to know, why have you chosen to become a barrister over a solicitor?
Okay.
And the 4 options we had were independence and flexibility, advocacy opportunities, a love of public speaking, or a variety of work. So I thought we'll just go through them one by one and talk about each one first, and then drum roll, I'll announce which one won the poll.
Well, to be fair, if you asked me that question, I'd probably say all 4 of those.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick one over all the others.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's many other reasons as well, but unfortunately, we're only allowed to do 4 options on the LinkedIn and Twitter polls, so they're the 4 I came up with.
Okay, so let's go through them one by one. So remind me, Hayley, what was the first one?
Independence and flexibility.
100%. So, I've probably discussed my background. I've worked for many places, worked as a paralegal for many years, worked as an employed solicitor for many years, worked at the CPS as a senior crown prosecutor, and then more recently I've gone to the independent bar. That's the massive, massive plus point for me. The fact that you've got that level of independence and control over your own work. So naturally, when you start in pupillage, you've not got all those connections, so you're relying upon returns. So, for example, if another member of chambers goes parted, a trial is then lingering, the clerks need to give it to someone, it then goes to you, or, a piece of work comes in and gets divvied out randomly, you get your work that way. Over time, you start to build up relationships with solicitors, and that's what I really like about the bar. You're self-employed, you're your own business, and it's all about how you build up those networks, build up those connections, and build up your business. And the nice thing also stemming from that is that you're in control to a degree of how much you're working or not working. Mm-hmm. So, for example, as a solicitor, you might go to court and then you finish your hearing, you've got to come back, you've got to go to the office and do the rest of your work that goes with that. Whereas as a barrister, you go to court, you've done your hearing, you've not got the pressure of a law firm going, oh, do you know what, you need to get back to the office now and crack on with your work. I mean, it might be that you've got other work to do as part of your practice anyway, but there isn't that pressure there of a boss saying you've got to do this and you've got to do that. Mm-hmm. And I suppose it comes on to the other thing that we've discussed so often, big problem in this industry, billable hours.
Yeah.
You get so much pressure from law firms. Oh, you need to do this. We need 6 hours a day. We need 7 hours a day. We need 15 units. I'm not a solicitor, I don't understand units, but, all this pressure. You've got to do this, got to do that. You haven't got a boss telling you what to do. Yes, you've got your clerks there, but they're there very much working with you.
Yeah.
So you've not got that pressure from above. So that's a massive, massive plus point for your own person.
Definitely. And I think, though, just to defend the solicitor route a little bit, one of the perks of being employed, so being in a solicitor's firm, is all of the security and the perks that come with that. So holiday pay, maternity leave, paternity leave. You don't have anything like that at the bar,
pension,
do you? The pension, yep.
Yeah, so that's it. It's very much a trade-off, mm-hmm. and for some people they prefer having that structure, and that's completely understandable. And if you do, I can see why you would prefer that, because obviously when I moved to the bar, I was taking a massive risk, because as you say, you're going from employment, structure there, salary, all the rest of it, pensions, holiday pay. If I'm not in court, I'm not being paid. Mm-hmm. If I want to take a few weeks off to go on holiday, I'm not being paid.
Yes.
So, you've got to make up for that during the other months and weeks of the year. You need to think about putting into your own pension. I've not got an employer that's making their contributions alongside me as well. So these are all the things that trade off alongside that, and you need to think about. So
keep track and deal with all your taxes and
that's the other thing as well. And good piece of advice for young barristers out there: make sure when you're being paid, or at least every month, you're putting money aside for your VAT, you're putting money aside for your taxes, because that time of year creeps up on you, and if you've not got the money there, you're going to leave yourself open to problems. So make sure as you go along, have a system in place whereby you're putting the right amount of money away, so that when it comes to paying your VAT returns, when it comes to paying your taxes, you've got the money there to pay that.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I'm quite an organised person, aren't I? And
yes,
a little bit tight as well, aren't I? So I always make sure I always put that money away. I've got a nice special account for that.
But you put way more than enough away, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. It's like having a bonus at the end of the year, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's like, oh yeah, John's paid you a bonus. So yeah, but no, independence is a big one for me. But it's something to think about. Not everyone wants that. Not everyone wants that risk of thinking, oh, I need to make sure I've got enough work coming in, or I need to be in control of these things. Some people prefer the structure of being within a firm.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with that.
Definitely not. So the next one we have is advocacy opportunities. So I'm sure you'll love to talk about this one, John.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because as a barrister, you are a specialist in advocacy. That is why solicitors firms are instructing you. So that is the bulk of the job. It's not the extent of the job. It's not all you do, but that is the bulk of the job. And particularly within criminal law, you're in court pretty much every single day. And that's what I enjoy. I much prefer being in the courtroom rather than dealing with the other aspects of being a lawyer. So for me, that was the main thing.
Yeah.
And even as a solicitor, when you're in a firm, particularly what I've found is that you're having to balance your time between advocacy and then the aspects of litigation, client care, whatever it might be. So all of your time isn't dedicated to advocacy, and effectively you're stretched a little bit. Now,
maybe some people might really like that though, like they really enjoy advocacy, but they want to be running their own case files and dealing day-to-day with the clients as well. So a firm that has solicitor advocate roles could be like perfect middle ground between the two.
Well, absolutely, and I think that's it. So if you still enjoy the other side of the job, if you want that direct access with the client and not just seeing them when you've got conferences or when you've got court hearings, etc., if that's what you want, then the solicitor route might be ideal for you. Also, you might enjoy the idea of, I'll draft this letter for the client. Oh, I enjoy the day-to-day correspondence, as part of litigation or whatever it might be. Then that's fine. And equally, I'm sure there might be people who are employed in positions as solicitor advocates where their job is 100% advocacy. I'm sure that must exist out there. They weren't the positions I was in.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that that may well exist as well. So
even though that middle ground exists, I think it's pretty clear to say if one of the main things you're looking for is advocacy opportunities, then it's probably the bar that you're going to be leaning towards, and rightly so.
Definitely. I got to a point, didn't I, Hayley, where I said file reviews were just not for me anymore. There were only so many file reviews I could do, so I needed to get back into an advocacy role, and that's why the bar was perfect for me.
Yes. So the third one, which is very closely linked, I think, is a love of public speaking. Yeah. So I think this is one, isn't it? Even as a child, there's a lot of people, barristers say this, don't they? They always loved public speaking. They always loved arguing. It was a skill that they naturally had, and that just took them towards a career at the bar.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I'm certainly not a natural when it comes to public speaking. It's something that I've developed, and it's a skill I've had to develop. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoy public speaking, and the opportunity to be there and stand up and have an audience that has to listen to you day in and day out is brilliant. Even if it's just, you're presenting to a judge, presenting an argument, that's fun. Presenting a closing speech to a jury, nothing like it. That is an incredible stage to be on.
It must be a little bit of a power trip as well. Everyone is hanging on, or sometimes.
Yeah.
We discussed this with Michael Stokes, didn't we? Sometimes jury members can fall asleep.
They certainly can.
Usually, everyone in that room is hanging on your every word. So you must get a bit of a ego boost from doing things like that.
100%, because you're there. you're standing up and, you know, for how, let's say you're on your feet for half an hour doing a closing speech, and for that amount of time, all of those jury members are there having to listen to you. And you know whether they're engaged or not. And more often than not, they will be. They've got eye contact with you. And yeah, it's just such a great feeling. You think, yeah, they're all there to listen to me.
Yeah.
And this is my chance to put this across. And it's, you know, it's the most fun piece of advocacy, I have to say.
Yeah.
So I thoroughly enjoy that.
But you love like your speech giving anyway, don't you? I mean, from all your time at the Speakers Club, that's something that comes natural to you. So I wonder if there's some barristers out there where their favourite part might be cross-examination or might be a little bit different. Or do you think it's really common that most people will love the closing speech?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah.
People say there's nothing like a speech to a jury, and there really isn't. That feeling that you have is just incredible. But yeah, no, cross-examination is, of course, part of the fun of this job as well. And no doubt, you know, that's the part that's really focused on when you watch all the TV shows, you know, your Suits and your Perry Masons and what have you.
Yeah.
Something we've discussed, it's nothing like what you'll see on TV, because on TV there's always a killer point that's put in cross-examination and the witness always concedes the point or cries or whatever. Sadly, that doesn't happen in real life, because in real life you put the point and the witness goes, no, I'm going to disagree. No, I disagree. So, so even when you've got them tied up in a corner, you know, they'll find a way to try and wriggle out. So it's nothing like what you see on TV, but nevertheless, it's still an enjoyable experience, cross-examination.
Yeah.
For the most part, obviously with exceptions, tricky cases, it's never fun to be cross-examining in those situations, but it's something that you need to do. It's part of your job. You need to put your case. But yeah, no, cross-examination is still fun.
Is it? Yeah.
But I would imagine, once again, you know, people have differences of opinions, but I imagine for most barristers, it's the closing speech.
Yes. And I think even if, you know, you do love public speaking, but from all the other aspects we discussed, you know, you want to run a caseload, you want the day-to-day work with your clients, there's still a lot of public speaking involved in a lot of solicitor roles, particularly if you're in, you know, the larger commercial firms. You have to do a lot of business development stuff that naturally lends itself to things like presentations.
Of course it does.
As you climb up through the firm, you know, partners, etc., you're constantly giving presentations, leading team meetings, etc. So if you do love public speaking, but maybe for reasons we discussed before, you want the security of being employed, advocacy is not the be-all and end-all for you, then you might still find yourself as someone that's an accomplished public speaker, but in a solicitor's firm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, something we've discussed before, and as you say, all those various opportunities for public speaking. So, yeah, still an important skill to have as a solicitor.
Yeah. And the last one we have is variety of work. So this is an interesting one, because I think in both professions, the variety of work can vary, can't it, greatly between what you're doing. Everyone has their own sector and specialism, etc. But do you find, as a barrister compared to your life as a solicitor, is there more variety at the bar for you?
I think so. I think in the sense of, I think that there's two elements to this. I think firstly, you can have barristers that have a mixed practice. So, you know, for example, what you might call a common law barrister, who probably covers bits of family, bits of crime, bits of civil. Whereas as a solicitor, it would be weird. I'm not saying it's unusual, but not saying it doesn't happen. But I imagine it's much more unusual to have such a varied caseload as a solicitor, because law firms tend to have specific departments, don't they? So they might have, you know, a crime department, a family department, a PI department, a commercial department. So you would normally tend to work in one. Whereas as a barrister, you can have people who have mixed practices that cover different areas of law. I don't have a mixed practice like that. I do exclusively crime. But once again, you might find that within solicitors' firms, you might have solicitors who focus on one specific type of thing. So taking crime as an example, you might have somebody who's a magistrates court specialist, so solicitors that deal exclusively with going to the magistrates court and representing the clients there. You might have solicitors who are within the Crown Court department and they specialise in the Crown Court litigation. So even within those firms, and once again, you know, this is me speaking very generally. Yeah. You might find that you are dealing with something quite specific, you know, so specific types of crimes, etc. Whereas as a barrister, I find that my practice is much more varied. So I do a decent chunk of motoring cases in the magistrates' court. So I have a number of specialist motoring firms that instruct me on these types of cases because I've got a specialism within that.
Yep.
And then also I cover general Crown Court work, but also within that, I cover sexual offences, which is quite specialised. So not everyone wants to deal with those types of offences. So I cover a broad spectrum of your general crime, your sex offences, your motoring, even fraud as well. So some people don't necessarily tend to cover the fraud offences. So I think within criminal law itself, it can be quite broad, and as a barrister, you can cover all those different types of offences.
Okay, so without further ado, I will announce the winner of the poll.
Okay.
Was advocacy opportunities.
Who'd have thought it?
Who'd have thought
Barristers want to do advocacy.
I know. Crazy.
Never would have expected that one.
No. But it did just get me thinking. So the love of public speaking one was the one that I probably thought was going to come out in front, but it didn't. It was just behind, or actually no. So advocacy came first, then it was independence and flexibility, and then it was love of public speaking.
Okay.
And this got me thinking to my own days when I was deciding what route to go down back in first, second year of university. And I always thought naturally, it'll be the barrister route. And it's probably because that's the one you see on the TV and the movies and stuff. They tend to show the barrister life a little bit more, don't they?
Yeah.
And then I realised quite early on, you need to be good at public speaking to be a barrister. And I joined a mooting society at university. And then immediately afterwards, they were like, okay, it's time to moot. And I was like, oh God, no. So I left the mooting society pretty quickly and then changed to the solicitor route because public speaking just didn't come naturally to me at all. Quite the opposite. It really used to make me so nervous and anxious. I remember in the first year of university, I think it was like 10% of our grade was how much you participated in seminars.
Right.
So it was like, in every seminar, okay, you've got to speak, you've got to contribute.
Yeah.
And that was scary to me as a first year student.
I can imagine, yeah.
So yeah, have you got any advice out there for people that, really want to be barristers but don't naturally find themselves, good at public speaking?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I certainly wasn't good at public speaking back then. If you compare me when I was 18 to what I am now, a million miles apart. So I think the thing with public speaking is it's one of those skills whereby some people are naturally gifted. You look at them and, they could go into a room, speak for a long time and speak dynamically, and it's a skill that they're born with.
It's like some people we see at our competitions, isn't it? And they are so good, they could walk into a courtroom right now. Yeah,
it's frightening how good some people are, and it just comes naturally to them. They've got that charisma there. For everyone else, this is a skill that can be learned. Anybody can become a good public speaker, and it's all about practice and learning the skill. And the thing with public speaking is, compare it to going to the gym. You could read a million books on how to do a press up. Unless you practice, you're never going to know how to do a press up. Likewise, the same applies to public speaking. So it's something that you just need to practice, and the more that you practice, the more proficient you'll become. And likewise, people talk about nerves and a lack of confidence, and that's the same thing. The way that you overcome your nerves is through practicing public speaking. So, it's always good just to start small. So you've talked about seminars where you might find there's only 10 people in the room. If the tutor asks a question, use that as an opportunity to answer the question. And if possible, try and flesh out your answer, instead of just... the tutor might say, well, which is the leading judgment on X, Y, Z? Instead of just standing up and saying, Smith and Jones, try and speak for 30 seconds. Oh yeah, tutor, the answer is this case. And this case was important because, develop it. You've just delivered a little bit of a mini speech there, and that's a chance for you to practice in front of, a few people, a small group. So start taking any opportunity that you can to start speaking in those environments. And I think part of the reason that people get nervous is because they worry that they're going to perform poorly. And of course you're going to. The first few times that you do anything, you're going to be naturally, I don't want to use the word, but you're going to be bad at that skill. Use those opportunities to make mistakes, get it wrong, and learn from it. You never know, you might even get some feedback. But the more you do your public speaking, the more you deliver, the more mistakes you make, the more you'll learn from those mistakes. And then the next time you're going to be better, and you're going to be better. And then once you've ironed out those mistakes, do you know what? You think, I enjoy this. And then your performances start getting better. You start looking forward to it, and you're less nervous.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, you have to deliver some speeches, you have to do some public speaking in order to A, improve, and then B, improve your confidence as well.
Yeah.
So it just comes in time.
Definitely. And it's kind of like high risk, high reward, isn't it? Because as I say, it scared me so much when I was younger that I just thought, I'm not gonna do this. And then when I was doing my training contracts, part of one of the requirements of the SRAs, you have to do some advocacy. So I did to restore a company to the register in the High Court. Undefeated in the High Court, I like to say. Yeah. I was so nervous. You remember, John? I had a script wrote down and everything, and you were trying to help me, and I was like, no, you're making me more nervous. All I had to do was go in and ask the judge to stamp an order. Yeah. But afterwards, the thrill, I was like, whoa. You could see like why people love doing this, because there is something about that adrenaline rush, and then afterwards, like the feeling of a high when you've finished a case.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I think if you really, really want to, stick with it. And another piece of advice that I wish I'd have known when I was younger as well is, that you learn so much just by observing. So for example, when I joined the Mooting Society and they were like, it's time to moot, and I was like, oh God, no. I wish I could have just said, oh no, I'm not ready. I just want to watch some moots for a little while first. Yeah. Or go to court a lot more and watch people performing advocacy, and then pick it up and then think, okay, I'm going to have a little go now. Because for me, it was just suddenly, don't know how to do this, never done this before. Yeah. I've got to do it. And I was like, well, no, I can't. So I wish I would have just known, observe for a bit until you get more comfortable.
Yeah, just watch it. Even watch some of the great presenters. There'll be some great speeches from history. Take a look at them, try and pick up some of the tips that are utilised. Just some simple, very basic public speaking tips. Speed is a massive one. Bring your pace right down. I think everyone suffers with this problem when they start public speaking, and particularly people like us with Scouse accents.
Yep.
We speak at 5 million miles an hour. So whenever I'm doing a formal presentation, formal speech, I have to think consciously about bringing the pace down. And as a general rule, an appropriate pace should be around 100, maybe 120 words a minute. So when you can speak at that pace, well, it makes your speech easier to follow. But also, when you don't rush, it makes you seem more confident.
Yeah.
Because if you're someone who stands up and speaks really fast, whoever you're speaking to, whether it's, a general audience, a judge, whatever, they think, wow, this person's quite nervous because of how quickly they speak. Whereas when you speak slower, you seem a lot more deliberate, you seem a lot more confident, and you've got that ability to think, do you know what, I'm in control, I'm speaking slowly. So whoever you're speaking to knows, this person knows what they're talking about.
I think speaking of nerves as well, John, you say, don't you, that for a lot of your big speeches, you still get nervous beforehand, but you'd never know from listening to you. But you say it's like it's a mark of a good speaker, don't you, when you have some nerves? Of
course you do, because whenever you've got a big speech, a big presentation, as you say, high risk, high reward. How high the stakes are, and when you start, I always get, I describe it as butterflies in my stomach. And you get that, and particularly in the last minute leading up to it, you think, oh God, you're thinking about what it is that you're going to be speaking about. All these 5 million thoughts are running through your brain, and then even when you stand up, the first few words that come out your mouth, you're still nervous. But then once I'm on to about sentence 2, sentence 3, I'm in a rhythm then, and it goes. And all really good speakers describe the same thing. Yeah. And it's a sign that you actually care about the presentation that you're about to give. I think that when you get to that point that you don't feel any nerves before a big presentation, that's a sign of complacency, and that's when you should be worried. So if you've got those nerves, it's a good sign. And as long as you've prepared in advance, you've practiced, you know your material, then you can deliver the presentation well. And I think a good thing to do is make sure that first sentence you've practiced it many, many times and you know it inside out, because once it's like muscle memory. Once you've delivered that first sentence, the rest of the speech then follows naturally from there. So make sure you get that first sentence out, it's delivered well, and then the rest follows.
Yeah. We've been asking people to send in questions and comments, etc. And we've had a couple of questions come in now, haven't we?
We certainly have.
We're going to look at those.
Yeah.
So the first one was a comment on Instagram, actually.
It was, wasn't it?
So this was where I think you were talking about how your paralegal role gave you some good experience for your career at the bar. So the question we got was from someone called Kirsty. And she said, do you have any advice on securing a paralegal position before starting the bar course? I've been getting rejected as soon as I mention I'll be pursuing the bar because they want someone who is long-term or will be pursuing the solicitor route. Okay. So, really good question. So I thought we'd have a chat about it.
Yeah, and I imagine there must be many people in that same situation.
Yeah.
So you might find that, say, if you're taking a year out between university and the bar course and you want a paralegal for some time. First thing is that there are going to be some firms that are just not happy with, when I say not happy, don't want to commit to employing somebody if that person's going to be there for a year or less. Yep. Understandable. There's nothing you can do about that, unfortunately. However, what you can do is, and I think you've done the right thing by being honest with firms. It's a good quality trait for you to have. The more applications you make, you're going to find a firm that's happy with you, that is happy to accommodate you, and they might only want you short term, because ultimately a lot of people find themselves in the position whereby they're applying for training contracts and pupilages, and in the meantime they're in paralegal roles. So firms know that paralegals are not there forever.
Yeah.
Now, obviously there's going to be some paralegals where they'll look to get them onto a training contract and keep them with the firm long term, but I think a lot of law firms know that people who are paralegaling and they've done their postgraduate courses and they're looking for that training contract, they're looking for the pupillage, they're going to be gone at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So I actually think if you're willing to commit for a year or so, whilst you're waiting to start your bar course, that in some circumstances is actually quite a lengthy amount of time, and some firms might actually be happy with that.
Yeah.
So I think it's really just a case of finding a firm that is happy with you for that period of time.
Yes.
And I think it's a case of just showing that, during that time that you're going to be there, you're going to be committed, you're going to be working hard for the firm.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it might be a case that once you find that right firm, that might help you long term, because that's potentially a firm who may well instruct you when you come to the bar. So, unfortunately, as I say, there are going to be some firms that simply won't want somebody that's not going to be there long term.
Yeah.
But there will be plenty of firms that aren't. It's just a case of finding that right firm.
Definitely. And also a thing to explore, this isn't super common, but it is an emerging thing that some large firms have their own barristers in-house now.
Yeah.
So the ones, I think there's a couple, DWF, Brown Jacobson, DAC Beechcroft, so they have their own barristers, their own chambers within their firms.
Yeah.
So, if there's paralegal positions at places like that, then they'll definitely be more open to you saying my aspirations are the bar, because you can stay with those firms and go to the bar. So explore those opportunities as well. And we're probably going to see more and more firms doing that as the years progress.
So, yeah, so you're going to see more of a hybrid. So, so take a look at firms like that, because, flipping your comment on its head, they potentially might be looking to invest in you for the future, because you may well be there for the long term if you ended up with a pupillage with a firm like that. So that's another option for you to explore.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think you've got our second question, haven't you, John?
Yeah, so another question we've had in, this was a direct message, and this was, how do you decide which practice area to pursue?
I think this is closely linked with everything we were discussing earlier about those 4 reasons about why you wanted to be a barrister, flipping on its head between barrister and solicitor. But in more general terms, I think you can just start talking about how you decided what you wanted to do, John.
I think so. So I think, like most people, I started my law degree thinking I would go and become a criminal barrister, because a lot of people before, certainly myself, and I imagine there are other people in this situation, see law and they think, wow, all law is crime. That's what you see on TV. That's what's promoted on all the TV shows, so you think, wow, that's the only option. But
I don't know though, maybe suits will have changed people's perception a little bit.
Probably, yeah. Probably suits has changed that quite a lot, actually. So it's crime and commercial now.
Yes.
So like a lot of people, I started the law degree thinking, yeah, I want to go to the criminal bar. And then as I went through the degree and studied various different topics, I thought, oh, maybe this might be an interesting topic. Maybe I'll be interested in this area of law. But then ultimately came full circle and decided that crime was for me. But I think taking this through and following it through, you might find during your degree that there are certain modules you enjoy and you think, do you know what? This might be something I can explore. This might be where my future lies. This might be the area I want to practice in. So if you do find that you've got a topic that you particularly enjoyed, look for local firms that practice in that area and apply to write in and say, listen, I'm a local law student. I've studied this. If you did well, mention that as well. And say, can I come in and shadow some of your solicitors, some of your barristers for a few days? And that will give you an idea of what that type of law is like in practice. So there was one particular module I did on my law degree, did well, scored a first class in that module. I thought, you know what, I might be interested in this. Wrote to a firm that did that type of law and spent a few days shadowing their solicitors. And lo and behold, when it came to the practice of that area, I was not interested whatsoever. Just did not like it. And that was really valuable for me because I was able to cross off and say, well, whilst I enjoyed the academic side, the study of that area, the practice was somewhat different for me. So the point I'm making is if you have something that you enjoy studying, try and get some practical experience so you can see what that area of law is like at the coalface.
Yeah.
And even if you've not studied something, but you think, do you know what, I might be interested in that. So commercial's the classic one. How many people say they want to be commercial lawyers?
Yeah.
Try and get some experience of that so you can understand what commercial law is, what it's like on a day-to-day basis, and whether you would be interested in that area. Then, secondly, you might find that you develop an interest in an area of law that you never would have expected. So I think you're the classic example of that, aren't you, Hayley?
Yeah, definitely. So just taking a step back first. So like you, John, I initially thought, oh, I'll end up being a barrister, a criminal barrister, family barrister, etc. But then when I was at university, so I went to court a few times, observed some criminal proceedings, did a week's work experience with family lawyers with the city council. And I was just like, this is such a harrowing work. And I'm quite an emotional person. I cried watching Planet of the Apes just a few nights ago. So I was like, this stuff to me, I don't think I'd ever have a good work-life balance with that type of work. I'd never be able to leave it at the door, I'd bring it home with me. So my personality naturally didn't lend itself to that type of work. And similarly in university as well, I was getting the best grades in equity and trusts, IP, company law. So naturally, I was doing much better in those subjects as I did in the family law modules, the criminal law modules, etc. So that's why when I went to do my training contract, we had to choose personal legal services or business legal services, and I was business. As I say, my personality just naturally was more suited to that area. But then even further than that, how I ended up in property and property litigation, it was an area that I didn't think I was going to go to at all. I like litigation. I didn't like property. So I mentioned equity and trusts. I scored really high in that. Property law, the same thing, but I didn't enjoy it. If anything, I think I worked so much harder in it because I thought I just need to pass this and make sure I never have to resit these exams ever again, But my firm, real estate was one of the biggest departments in my firm that I trained in. So it was a given that trainees would do a real estate seat. But, I was like, embrace it, you can't go in this with a bad attitude. Not least because you want to get an NQ position at the end of it. But I actually loved those 6 months, so much so that I was like, oh God, almost completely changed from litigation and went down the transactional route. But but not quite. I need the pressure and the adrenaline of court deadlines and litigation, like that drives me. So I ended up very luckily finding the perfect medium, which was property litigation, and absolutely loved it. But I would have never, if you would have said to me as a student or even as a trainee, which area do you see yourself qualifying in, I wouldn't have said property.
No.
So it's just, you've got to embrace every opportunity. You never know when you're going to find the place that's right for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to summarise, if you enjoy studying something, try and get some practical experience. But then also, as you go through your career, you might paralegal or what have you, keep an open mind. You never know where you might end up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, going back, I paralegaled in PI, so I thought I'm going to end up as a PI lawyer. And then, lo and behold, a training contract came up at a criminal firm, applied for it and got it, and ended up back into criminal law, which is what the plan was initially, and haven't looked back since. So yeah, make the most of all of your opportunities and keep an open mind.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just get qualified.
Yeah.
If an opportunity comes up and you enjoy it enough that you're doing well in it and you can qualify in the area, but you think, I didn't see myself here, I don't know if I'm going to be here forever. It's not the end of the world. I mean, this is kind of a bit of taboo advice, isn't it? But it's true. If you qualify somewhere, like you, John, as a solicitor advocate, but you always had it in your heart that you wanted to be a barrister.
Yeah.
It's not the end,
No,
5 years, 10 years, 11 years.
11 years,
down the line, you can make that switch. Yeah. And the same as a solicitor. Like, I know people that practiced in property for a while, then they went in-house, then they changed to banking and finance. It's not a no. You're not stuck in that one area forever.
No, and particularly, coming back to what we were saying before, this is one of the nice things about being a solicitor. So, as you say, get yourself qualified. If you're in a firm big enough that's got multiple departments, so let's say, I'm just going to pluck two things out the air. Let's say you're doing personal injury, but you wanted to do family law. If your firm has those two departments, there might be nothing wrong with you saying, to your bosses, can I go and retrain within that family team because they're there? I don't know what the implications of that would be, but at least the opportunity is there. And that's the nice thing about having large multidisciplinary law firms. You've got that opportunity to cross-qualify and always retrain later in your career. I certainly know a number of solicitors that have done that. They've practiced in one area for many years, then gone and retrained in something else. So it's never too late to do what you want.
No, and there's nothing wrong with that. Not everyone knows this is 100% what I want to do. This is the area I want to specialise in. You might like loads or like a good few and you don't know which one's for you and you need to practice in that area before you can decide. So just keep an open mind and you never know where you might end up.
Exactly. So that brings us on to what we've got coming up soon, doesn't it? So last night we had the public speaking session of the Advocacy Club.
It was a good one.
It was a fun one. I always enjoy those sessions. And we were talking about the use of notes, weren't we? So I think there'll be a video going live soon about I've given feedback to our members and spoken specifically about the use of notes in relation to public speaking. Next week we've got the
civil submissions
advocacy, so always a good one, particularly for those of you that want to practice as civil barristers. So this is the problem that we've got is a very practical problem that you'll no doubt encounter as a pupil barrister and certainly in your early years. So really practical problem there. And then the 1st of June, our plea and mitigation competition.
Indeed.
So we've got a final few places remaining. So if you want to take part in that competition, speedmooting.com, all the information is there. You'll get the bundle the night before, just like being in practice. As I say the night before, that's actually fairly generous. The number of times I've been briefed for a sentence and the clerk's got, I've got these solicitors that want you for a committal for sentence in an hour's time. Yeah, go on, Add me on the DCS, I'll have a quick read. So getting the bundle the night before is actually fairly generous, to be fair. So that'll be a good one. Everything's included, so include all the information in there for you. So there's no research, no drafting. It's pretty much read the materials and formulate your own submissions to deliver the following day, all online. You'll be judged by practitioners and legal academics. So and hopefully you'll get some good feedback from them, win, lose or draw.
Yeah.
And of course the winner's going to walk away with an iPad and a trophy, and the runner-up a £100 Amazon voucher and a trophy. So that's that competition, and then we have a few big events later this year.
We do. We're not announcing anything just yet.
We're not announcing anything just yet. You'll probably see some announcements from us next month, and maybe another announcement in July. But we've got some huge events coming up.
Yes.
One of them is a brand new event for us, and I'm sure it'll be very, very popular with those that follow Speed Mooting. So keep an eye out. We've got some big announcements coming soon.
Yes.
If you're not on our mailing list, join it. So go on to speedmooting.com/contact. Bang in your name and your email address. You'll be on our mailing list, and you'll always hear the latest from us as soon as we announce anything. But yes, we're excited about what we've got.
Very excited.
It's something we've been thinking about for a while, and yeah, we're finally launching.
We won't tease you anymore.
Yeah, we won't tease you anymore. There's not much more we can say about it than that, but yeah, big announcement coming soon.
Yes, and closely related, I think, is what we always say: send in your questions, comments to us, info@speedmooting.com, or drop us a message, a comment on any of our platforms. I mean, it's May, but that means for us, we're already thinking heavily about 2025 and beyond, aren't we, John? So
absolutely.
Our advocacy club, we revamp that schedule every year. So if there's anything in particular you'd love us to do in advocacy club, we cover a lot already, but there's certainly more we can do.
There's always more we can do.
Send us your suggestions.
Yeah. We need to come up with a hashtag for our questions, don't we, Hayley?
You've said this a few times, John, but I can't think of one.
Yeah, we need something short and snappy. If you can think of an appropriate hashtag for your questions, let us know. So that's two things we need to think about. We need a name for our listeners, and we need a hashtag for our questions. So any thoughts, throw them on social media and tag us. Although, well, actually, I was about to say bang a hashtag, but we don't know what the hashtag is yet. So we'll come up with that in due course.
All right, I'm gonna think of this hashtag for next week's episode.
I listened to a podcast that's hosted by David Coulthard and Eddie Jordan, and they're the same thing. They needed to come up with a name for their listeners. So I like the idea. I'm always inspired by podcasts that I listen to. So that's what we can think of. We need
Leave it with me.
Yeah, leave it with us. We'll come up with some. Hopefully by episode 15, we'll have a name for our listeners.
Oh God, no! I'll do it for next week. I'm more creative than that.
Oh, okay.
Give me some credit. But if you want to send me some suggestions, that'll be welcome.
Yeah. So we told our listeners last week about our weekend away, and we went to London, didn't we, Hayley?
We did. London baby. And the weather showed up for us. It was a gorgeous sunny weekend, wasn't it?
Certainly was. Yeah, we had a nice little drive down on the Saturday. Nice walk around London.
I love seeing all the London sights.
Oh, it's cool, isn't it?
Yes.
Nice seeing the sights.
I think you'd been a lot more than me, because as a barrister or as a bar student, you have to go to the Inns of Courts a lot, don't you? So I'd never really been to London. Well, no, I'd never been to London prior to knowing you, I don't think.
Oh, right. Okay.
Don't think so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember the first time I went, and you see the RCJs, the Old Bailey, Big Ben. It's so good just walking around and seeing all those sights. You feel like you're abroad.
It's like abroad.
It's like
because,
a city break. Yeah.
So it was nice seeing all those sights. And then the following day we went to, is it Leavesden, something like that?
Yeah.
I can't remember what the town is called.
Watford?
No, it begins with an L. I think it's like
Wasn't it in Watford though?
I don't know.
We don't know where it was.
We don't know. We're showing our ignorance when it comes to geography of the South, but regardless, it was the studio for Harry Potter, wasn't it?
Yeah, we kept saying Harry Potter World last week.
Harry Potter World. Turns out it's not called that.
I think that might be somewhere in America.
Maybe. But I suspect this is going to be his last reference on the show, because I've watched the films now. We've been there, so
I don't know. You keep getting your Formula 1 in. I'm going to keep bringing Harry Potter in.
All right, we'll see. Maybe he does get future references, but I have to say, the studio tour was cool.
Yeah, really good.
Little bit disappointed that they didn't have their courtroom there, I have to say.
Yeah.
But everything else was crazy. It was a good day. They had their the grand. Is it called the Grand Hall?
The Grand Hall.
The Grand Hall, and it is very much like going to the Inns of Court, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you got your long benches. You've even got your benches table at the top almost.
Yep.
So I wonder whether it was inspired by the Inns of Court.
Maybe.
Who knows?
J.K. Rowling, if you're listening to this,
yeah, if you're listening,
let
to
us
JK,
know.
Let us know.
I don't know where ideas come from.
I'm sure she must listen to the podcast. I'd be surprised if she doesn't listen
of course,
to this podcast.
Who doesn't listen to this podcast?
Yeah. Even Joe Rogan must listen to our podcast,
of course,
must he?
yeah.
Joe Rogan's there.
He's listening going,
what?
I'm going to do that next week.
Yeah.
I need to talk about Harry Potter on my podcast.
So J.K. Rowling, if that was your inspiration, let us know. But yeah, I think that probably brings us about to the end, doesn't it?
I think
this is
so.
Our longest ever episode.
I know, we couldn't shut up today.
Well, we're getting into a rhythm now, aren't we?
Yes.
We're learning how to speak.
Who'd have thought it?
So yeah, brings us to the end of the episode. We've enjoyed recording it. Hope you've enjoyed listening to it. And until next time.
Bye.